Hello, I'm Fintan Hastings and I'm joining you from broadcast studio at GBTA APAC Conference 2026 here in Singapore. I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by Namrata Goyal, who's Regional Manager for Enterprise at Grab for Business. Namrata, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Finn.
So, first question, based on the 2026 GBTA Grab for Business SEA Traveller Research, it was revealed that a significant managed ground gap exists in the region, noting that while 95% of business travellers use ride-hailing, only 58% of their companies have a formal relationship with a provider. How are you seeing regional leaders bridge this gap to gain better visibility into their travel spend?
I think that's a very good question. And I think let's go back to the statistics that you just mentioned, right? 95% of business travelers have said that they use a ride-hailing service provider. But I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Finn, only 58% say that they actually have a formal relationship with a ride-hailing provider. And I think there are two main reasons for this divergence of percentage that we see, right? The first one, if you think about it, a lot of times ground transportation comes in as an afterthought. A lot of people tend to look at it like, hey, this is just a $10 ride, rather than actually looking at the number of rides that are taken on an average business trip, the quantum of receipts that somebody would need to be reconciling at the end of the trip. And I think second, because what we also see is that because 58% are the only ones who have a formal policy in place, you see a lot of rides that are taken which are technically out of policy, right? And honestly, if you ask me, none of the business travelers actually want to take a ride out of policy, right? Like, who wants to have a receipt rejected? Who wants to have compliance come after them? Nobody. But think of it from the business traveler perspective. You land at an unfamiliar airport, maybe after a 5-hour flight, you're tired, the airport is unfamiliar, you can't understand the signs. And what happens is you see that business travelers just take the easiest option possible, right? Which may just be the limo counter which is standing at the airport, easy for them to understand, easy for them to access. But that limo may be out of policy for them as per their ground transportation policy. And what we typically see when regional travel leaders come up to us now is that, hey, is there a way that we can actually make things automated for our business travelers? Can we make this easier so that gaps like this don't occur, so that mistakes like this don't occur? So for example, at Grab for Business today, one of the most common questions that come up to us is that, do you have a method in which you can just block out any fleets which are not applicable for us as per our policy? So automations, things like this are some of the key topics that we are discussing with regional travel leaders. And I think using this particular way in is going to be the way that travel leaders can actually reclaim visibility into these lost transactions.
Thank you. The research highlights that expense reporting is currently the most outdated part of the trip for travellers in Southeast Asia, with over 50% of employees seeing this as a stressful chore. What role does automated ground transportation play in modernising the employee experience?
I'm going to flip a question back to you, Finn. You've traveled to, are you based in Singapore or have you traveled here for the event?
I've traveled here.
Okay. And maybe I'm going to ask you a second question. On an average, a salesperson, when they go for, let's say, a 3-day business trip, how many receipts do you think they have to reimburse, especially when it comes to ground transportation? On an average.
Oh,
3-day business trip.
At least 10.
Bingo, right? So our research shows that an average salesperson needs to reimburse at least 8 to 12 receipts for every transaction. And ground transportation is fragmented, right? Because again, over here, it's important that you don't look at the dollar amount. You look at how much of work that person needs to be putting in to reimburse 12 receipts, let's say, for example, for every single business trip that they do. Our studies also show that on an average, each business trip takes about 20 minutes for a person to reconcile all the receipts. By the time you figure out that, hey, this was for a business expense, this is the actual PDF snapshot, and then attach it and then put that in, right? No wonder people are finding it to be a chore, because that's time that you could use better spent. That's time that you could actually use in terms of doing something which is revenue generating, for example. So one of the key things when people come to us at Grab is that does the Grab for Business provide, let's say, an automated integration into expense providers like Concur, or maybe API so that the receipt directly goes in? An answer to that is yes, yes. And that's the main thing that we are trying to address, that how do we make it super smooth? How do we make the entire journey automated so that for the traveler, the policies are preset? They don't need to do any manual reconciliation at the end. Everything flows super smooth right into their expense management systems. And they don't need to think of it as one more tick off the list, right? Like it just happens automatically. So I think that's something that we are working very heavily with the travel leaders nowadays.
Great. And finally, safety remains the top priority for 75% of business travelers in the study. Beyond being just a checklist item, how is safety actually shaping travelers' choices of transportation providers?
It's a funny story. Actually, if you think about the genesis of Grab, Grab actually started because our co-founder, who was in consultancy at that time, would feel unsafe traveling late at night, right? And this is when you talk about other cities in Southeast Asia, we do understand the sort of anxiety that a business traveler would feel in an unfamiliar city, maybe late at night, or taking a car in remote places, etc., right? Safety is at the very base, the foundation of what Grab as well as what Grab for Business does. Today, it's no longer about things like share your ride or emergency buttons, right? If you look at the Grab platform today, we've evolved. Apart from basic features like share your ride and the emergency button, you've got AI-enabled features like audio protect. You've got driver telematics, which are there for all the rides. You've got dash cams, which exist. You've got telematics data, which is computed. You've got driver fatigue management systems. So I would say that for us, we are constantly at the forefront of making sure that whatever we do, safety is at the forefront of that. Today, we're seeing requests coming in from companies about women drivers, right? So just to give you an example, in Thailand, we've got companies wherein they've got a night shift. And we're seeing that after a drive that we did in terms of onboarding more women drivers over the last 1 year, we're seeing that companies are actually requesting for women drivers, right? And we're seeing a large uptake in that. So I would say that Grab, along with Grab for Business, believes that this particular duty of care with respect to safety is going to be at the foundation of everything we do. It's not going to be like an afterthought or anything like that. It's going to be at the absolute core value of what we want to bring to our customers.
Thank you. Namrata Goyal, Regional Manager, Enterprise at Grab for Business, thank you so much for joining us in the broadcast studio today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Finn.
Thank you. You've been watching Broadcast Studio at GBTA APAC Conference 2026 here in Singapore. Thank you for joining us.